Hello and welcome back to Factorio. So since the last episode I went ahead with the manual targeting tool and blew everything here to Kingdom Come. Then I ran through with capsules, defender capsules and nukes and got rid of the last few nests. So touch wood, this area is now biter free and secured. So then I went prospecting to see what was in here, and basically not a lot. It's a lot of open space with not much resources. I've started marking down the bigger ones. The bigger ones are still sort of 9 million. And then put X's by a few of them. So we've got a couple of X's here. We've got a 21 million coal and a 49 million iron. Over here we have a 51 million iron. We have a 21,000 oil deposit. Now, I'm more interested in this because of the number of wells rather than because of the amount of product. Later on, once the wells have started to get depleted, you're really limited by the number of oil wells you can tap. Then there's a 24 million copper and a 39 copper, a 24 million coal. Okay. So those look to me like they're the resources that are worth tapping. So there's this patch here, this, and a patch here. Right, not a lot, to be honest. Anyway, so you can imagine setting up a rail network here which basically harvests out this area. Then what are we going to do? Well, the plan is to set up a series of reasonably self-contained bot-based builds to do science as fast as I can get it to go before the world jams up. As and when I've got another 3/4 of this area that I can carve out and defend. So that's the resources I have to play with. No doubt I'll need more resources. What's the plan? So what I've decided is that I'm going to set up individual construction areas so that they are producing things as efficiently as I can get that build to go. If they are, they will almost certainly be made to overproduce, right? Because you either have an entire build or not have a build. So my plan is to put them behind switches so that when there's fewer than 3 trains of material to pick up, they are on, and when there's more than 7, they turn themselves off. That kind of thing. So any particular production site will only be active part of the time. The other thing I want to do is really minimize the rail traffic and the overlap between traffic. So ideally, I would like my resource collection rail network, the one that's bringing in the ore and bringing in the oil, to be a separate network with no shared track, no trains shared with any of the products. And similarly, the trains carrying the iron and copper plates around, I'd like them ideally to never end up sharing a bit of track with something that's moving, for example, engines out. The other thing is where there is a resource which is only used for one thing, so for example the lubricant is only used for electric engines and the heavy oil that we're not cracking is only used for making lubricant, that kind of thing. I really want these to be on their own dedicated sub-rail networks or dedicated factories if we can do it within one site. There are also massive differences in the volumes of materials. So we get through a lot of ore and a lot of plates. By the time you're down the other end, you get through, a handful of some of the other things. And it's really a case of funneling the massive inputs in around the outsides towards a center, which is taking really low volumes of stuff, which then ultimately goes into the research area. Okay, so having said that, we need to start planning it out. And to do that, I've been using a couple of online tools. And the one I've found most useful at this time is Duma's Factorio planner. So what I did for comedy value was set up to request that I'm going to make 10,000 of each potion a minute. Now that's obviously completely unrealistic. I very much doubt my machine can handle this, and I don't have the resources for it. But it's a nice round number, and it gives you some idea of the scale of things that would need to be built if you're going to put down these modules so that any one module has a fighting chance of being active a lot of the time. Okay, so the thing you can do with this planner is choose which resources are shared globally and which ones are going to be used at point in each recipe. So for example, say if I can find gears, here's gears. So gears are not shared. So there are several recipes which require gears, red science for example, and also engines. If I click that, the gears are pulled out into their own thing, and we can see 7% of the gears are going to engines. If I uncheck it, this now factors in building the gears locally to the engines. My rule of thumb is anything which is used 100% by something else is not shared. So let's find an example. If we scroll on down, okay. And then there's a couple of special cases of this rule. Okay, so all of the sulfur, 100% of the sulfur is used for making sulfuric acid. So I've left that as a non-shared resource because I'm expecting, to be honest, to have a single site where I have water, petroleum, and iron plates, and we go through 2 rounds of production to produce sulfuric acid. The other time I've put things, and the other case of this is, for example, for the satellite, that is the only thing that uses solar panels or accumulators or radars, and solar panels are only used by space science. Okay. Then there are 2 special cases. The first is gears. Now, the reason I have always had gears local is because there is only one case in the entire build where gears are needed where plates are not also provided, and that is red science. So since we already have to have a plates train arriving, for example, wherever these inserters are built, I don't see anything to be gained by having an additional train coming in, dropping off an additional resource to make the gears. So yeah, so I mean, if you look at this, we've got 90 machines to make the green science. I don't think there's anything to be gained by bringing in an extra train. We're going to have to bring in a plates train and a circuits train, an extra one for gears when we can make them on site, and it's only 5 or 6 assemblers, well, 8 in total. Okay. The other special case is copper cable. So there's 3 or 4 places where copper cable's needed. The most obvious being green science, but you need green circuits, you need it for red circuits. You also need it for one of the researches. The reason I'm not making that off-site is because of volume. So for every 1 plate you get put in, you get 2.8 copper coils out. So it's not a compression, it's an expansion. So it makes sense to make them locally and consume them locally. And that's it for the special cases. So this is really the entire plan. So the other thing we can look at is things which consume more than 50% of a resource. So plastic consumes more than half of the coal and more than half of the petroleum. So it makes sense to place the plastic close to where the petroleum is made. So a short train journey or locally on site. What else? The rocket fuel consumes 100% of the light oil that we don't crack. So again, that needs to be fairly close into the refinery. Green circuits take 60% of the copper plates, so we want our green to be close to the copper smelters. Batteries take a lot of the sulfuric acid. That's not so pressing because there's actually quite a low volume of sulfuric acid involved. A couple of trains of that would probably be okay. Then just over half of the steel goes to low density structures, so we probably want to be making them quite close to the iron smelters. We can place them wherever we want relative to copper and plastic because the volumes are relatively low. Then the other major ones, the blue circuits take just over half of the greens, so we want them to be close to the green, or make them on site maybe. And then we probably want to make the engines close to the blue science, and that's pretty much it. So that gives me a sort of skeleton for how things should be laid out on the map. So if I place the things with more than 50% of capacity near the things that make them, that gives me basically a sort of tree of what needs to be produced. The low volume things can be placed almost arbitrarily around that. And that's the plan really. So I'm now going to go away and draw some pictures and see if I can come up with a diagram that makes sense of this, and then get back to you with a sketch of how the base could be laid out. Alright, thanks very much for watching. Sorry there's no gameplay today. Oh, it's a 31 million stone, I missed that. Mark that on while I'm here. Stone, confirm. Right. Do we have a big stone patch? That's 31. I think let's mark this with an X because it's near some other resources we're going to be harvesting anyway. There we are, X marks the spot. The only other issue is where this stuff is going to go. And I think I'm going to start putting smelters around here, or maybe on a corner like that. And then we'll start building production up this direction. So that gives us this area here to build in. Failing that, well, yeah, that's probably the biggest open area that doesn't have anything in it other than this area up here. But I think what I don't really want to do is get halfway through building and then bump into mines. So the other option is to totally separate the resource harvesting area from the builder area. So clear out another one of these segments, dedicate one entirely to mining and one entirely to the factory. We'll see how practical that is. All right, well, thanks very much. I'll be back soon, hopefully with a design, and look forward to seeing you again soon. All right, bye-bye.